On December 28th, members of the Ukraine Socialist Solidarity Campaign had a chance to talk with Eugene, who lives in Kyiv. He talked about the conditions there. Here's what he had to say.
So I hoped that I will have electricity today on our meeting, but it disappeared just in minutes before the meeting started. So now I'm in completely dark flat, and it's unusual for holidays, because since holidays started, light was always how to say enabled, was always enabled since Christmas. As you know, we here have like 2 Christmases, because bigger part of Christians of the world celebrated on December 25, but in some parts of the world it's celebrated on January 7. And Ukraine, as a European country, wants to join other world and celebrate it on 25. But a lot of people still celebrating on the January 7th. So we have like two holidays and two holidays. Also, we had New Year. So someone who decide when to off the electricity decided to make holidays for us like more happy, but as we see, light disappeared again. What can I tell you about Kyiv? I'm living in Kyiv for a long time. Before that, also I lived in Bucha. You could know this city now. Unfortunately, I want you to know about Bucha in some another way, but we have what we have. So in Kyiv, we all already used to blackouts. A lot of shops, coffee shops, or how does it call, markets, supermarkets, connects to generators. I don't know how you call it in English, but this big engine where you put diesel or gas or something like that, and it produce electricity. So sometimes even during blackout, such shops still working, and that's good for us, definitely. Also, there is like a joke among Ukrainians that we say that before blackouts, we didn't realize how much things we don't need. Because you in common situation, you walking on your apartment and see a lot of electrical stuffs and think, oh, how could I live without this, let's say, mixer? But then blackout appeared, and we all realized that we actually don't need it. But in general, Ukrainians still stay strong. Don't know how to say it. Stay strong. Of course, it's inconvenient to live in blackout or in how to say often blackouts, but we still believe in bright future. We still believe in victory, or at least believe in the end of the war. So I could say that yes, it's inconvenient, it's disturbing us, but in general, more or less, It's okay. You could try to cut off electricity for, let's say, 10 hours for a few days maybe, and you will understand that in general it's not as bad as you could think about it. Don't know, maybe you have some questions.
I've got a question, Eugene. How did people respond to Zelensky's speech to the United States Congress? And of course, well, him winning the military package as well.
I'm not sure about which speech you're talking, because there is a lot of speeches and I can how to mix up them. Could you please remind me what he said?
Yeah, it was the most recent one, which was the week before Christmas. And it was covered here, I mean, on all of the television stations. It was a really big deal, and it was certainly, you know, headlines in the newspapers and things like that. And I think people in this country responded very positively to it. I mean, we understand what Zelensky is as a neoliberal capitalist politician, but he's a very powerful speaker, and he said a lot of really interesting things that, well, for us, I think, in particular, were interesting and important in regards to Ukraine and his relationship also with the United States. So Ukraine's relationship with the United States. So it's fine if you don't have any comments on it, but it was the most recent one that I think people were watching it in Ukraine as well. Yeah, I don't know.
It was a speech in English to the United States Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's
honestly, I don't actually remember what he said, but I can, how to say, can guess that he said, as described, about relationships with not only UN, but maybe in general with Western world, about the weapon, about victory, and so on. I guess he talked about something like that. But in general, about reaction, I could say that any Zelensky speeches will be reacted very good from Ukrainians. As you said, he is a good speaker, and he is popular as never in Ukraine now. Everyone love him, or at least like, because even we as leftists, we don't like him in general. It's obvious why, but we appreciate his actions, because in general we hope that, we believe that he acting good in such circumstances.
John, and then Mudassar.
So I've got two questions. First of all, Eugene, could you talk a little bit more, can you give us some kind of sense like of what people are saying? You know, like if you go into a coffee shop, let's say, or wherever with some friends, just like what kinds of things are people talking about? That's my first question. My second question is, as far as Zelensky's party, his political party, I recently saw a commentary about corruption within his party, and the person who was commenting on it, someone named I believe it was Denis Davidov. You know, he was saying, look, it's not Zelensky, I support him, but his party, that they were talking about the influence of like real estate developers and so on within his party. And if you're familiar with that issue, if you could comment on that also.
Mm-hmm. Okay, first question about first question. Um, Maybe it's like mm, um, maybe it could be hard to understand how it feels to live in such war during almost a year. Because we all used to it, and in general we do not even talk about war or politics or something like that. And if you will visit in Kyiv some coffee shops that I often um visit, uh, you can even not understand that there is a war in that country, because people talking about their relationships, their work, their holidays, and so on. But sometimes you could hear that they discuss some events, they discuss some operations, that yeah. Unfortunately, I can't without electricity use Google Translator, so sometimes I can stuck to remember some words. In general, they sometimes people talking about politics and war and so on, but mostly they don't. Mostly they just discuss their private life. I could say that. And the second question about corruption. Mm, Corruption in Ukraine is like a big problem for common Ukrainians, and if you could check, I don't remember who makes this survey about corruption. I guess it's Amnesty International, but I don't remember how does it calls. So people think that corruption is a big deal, is a big problem, uh, and uh, and we often hear about some corruption activity from politics, and even if we hear about some huge, extremely big corruption, we also just used to it and do not, in generally, discuss do not discuss it a lot. But if we say about like press or media, I can't describe how they talked about the corruption in Zelensky's party, because I do not read Ukrainian media, and because of that I can't answer, unfortunately. Okay, that's this is it.
Thank you.
John, did you have a second question or no?
I had two questions. One was what people were discussing, and
Oh,
the
okay,
other, yeah.
okay, okay. All right, Mudassar, Ted, and then Stanley.
So, hi, sir, Eugene, sir. I don't, so what I was seeing is recently is that how is the situation in the capital, and like how are the people reacting to that? I saw many videos of them celebrating Christmas. Like how frequent are these blackouts? Like, on a daily basis, or it goes on an alternative basis? And the next point is like, will Ukraine make a quote unquote settlement with Russia, or like will they like try to push eastwards because Wagner are there and all those militias are there? Like, how are they going to like convince the Russians to come on their side? Like from 2014, that's been the biggest issue. So how are they going to convince the Russians? Is like Zelensky having a plan, or is he going to say like, okay, after this arms deal, that he may not want to continue the fighting? That's the point, because Russia is very insistent on it's very contradictory country. So how is Ukraine's stance on the war now? Because February 24th is not that far also. So like, what's the plan with regarding to Iran's intervention, and like how Ukrainians view that from a thing apart from Christmas celebrations, of course, and like things. That's my point. And the next is, how do the religious people view the war in Ukraine? Like how are they viewing it? Like good, bad, or like what? And that's the only thing. Thank you.
Okay, about first point about celebrating. There was a huge discussion about Christmas tree, because I don't know how it works in the United States, but here every New Year, because New Year is our main holiday in the year, not Christmas. Um, the city installs like a big Christmas tree with some Christmas lights on it and so on. And there was a huge discussion about do we need such tree now, because there is a lot of days of blackout, and this Christmas tree needs a lot of electricity, and should we use it in such way, or is it better to use it in some another way, and so on. But Klitschko, the mayor of Kyiv, decided to install it, so now we have Christmas tree, have Christmas lights on it, and so on. And he said like, we will not let Russia steal our Christmas or our New Year or something like that, he said. And about this, if I understood the second point right, it was about date of the Christmas, yeah? I'm sorry, because my English is not as good as you.
No,
Um,
no, 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 sir. My point is like, what about the war? Because 24th February will come soon, no? 24th February of the next year. So what are the plans for it? Will Ukraine push to get back its territories, or what they're planning to do, and what leftists think of it? Because unions were also not happy with Zelensky's policies and things like that. So that was my next question. I didn't place the question of unions, but how leftists are viewing it. Like, is he good, or like bearable, or what? That's what I want to say.
mhm. So about the end of the war, uh, I don't know. I've seen some kind of analytics from, I guess, some American institution about scenarios of the end of the war, and there was five scenarios, and it was like all possible scenarios. So they say the war can end soon with victory of Ukraine, war can end soon, not as soon with victory of Ukraine, and the same soon or not as soon with victory on Russia or of Russia. And the fifth scenario was like the war will how to say, stop without a winner. So I don't know. I think that this question is like really personal for Ukrainians, because you can talk with a lot of us, and every people will answer you about it in their own way. They have their own analytics and so on. And about leftists, um, I've seen some, how to say, uh, rebellion intentions or something like that, moods, rebellion moods, but not among leftists, but among Ukrainian army, because sometimes some parts of it don't like how generals acting, what they ordering, and so on. And sometimes they like protested, but in very peaceful way. They like filming videos and saying that they want to oi, they want to change something or something like that. But leftists, we are like acting as we acted in the first months. We just collecting money, spending money on different humanitarian needs, and even not only humanitarian, because a lot of leftists are in army, and sometimes they need some supplement. They need drones or clothes or army equipment or something like that. And I could say, I can say more like about social movement, our organization. Here, nothing changed since the war started, I can say. But sometimes we protesting some particular decisions. For example, the last decision was that our parliament approved a law which make impossible to cite Russian sources in scientific publications that made in Ukraine. So we can't cite, for example, Lenin for now, can't cite at all. Or so I hope I answered more or less.
Okay. Ted.
Well, my question is similar, but more specific. It seems like the preferred end to the war in the Biden administration milieu is a diplomatic settlement where Crimea recovers Donetsk and Luhansk, but gives up Crimea to Russia. And this is speculative because they may never get those negotiations. But do you think that could be politically acceptable to people in Kyiv? Question.
Yeah. This is a hard one. I guess that it depends. For example, for me, victory means the situation that was before this war started. Even without Crimea and Donbass, I will consider it as victory. I think I can say that the only unacceptable for Ukrainians end of the war is like if Zelensky, for example, will just say like, okay, Crimea is Russia, Donbass is Russia, and this will not be accepted by Ukrainians, and I can predict like new revolution that could start because of it. But I think that Zelensky understands it, and he will never stop to consider Crimea as a part of Ukraine. And also I think that returning of Crimea and Donbass is like the most how does it call, if you want something like this is the scenario that mostly Ukrainians want. Most of Ukrainians want to take back Crimea, take back Donbass, and so on. But in general, Ukrainians are extremely patriotic. I think that you couldn't imagine how patriotic Ukrainians are. And even the smallest possible victory in this war will be celebrated as the biggest victory. So something like that. So I think I can say that the minimum that Ukrainians want is come back to situation that was before war started, and the maximum is take back Crimea and Donbass. Yeah, something like that. And I guess that Zelensky understands that.
Stanley.
As you probably know, we do not represent the majority of the left in the United States. And among the, let's say, liberals and pacifists, every once in a while they bring out a fellow named Yuri Shelazhenko. I have no idea if I'm saying that name right. I just put the name in the chat. And they bring him out as an important political figure in Ukraine. He's the leader of the pacifists. As far as I can tell, he represents no one. I mean, maybe himself and a few others. So my question is, are there groups of any size in Ukraine who oppose using weapons to defend Ukraine?
I could say that there is definitely such group present. Such group definitely present in Ukraine, because Ukraine is like 40 millions of people, and you can find here group with any imaginable point of view. But I could say that I have never heard it from some kind of media. I have never heard such ideas, such point of view in personal conversations. So such group definitely somewhere present in Ukraine, but you should try hard to find them, because first of all, it is extremely unpopular point of view, and the second, it's like illegal. I could say that if you will say on some public place that you want Ukraine to stop defending itself, the best that can happen to you after that is arrest. But I guess that someone from like a civilians will come to you or find you and beat you or even kill. It's possible, of course. So maybe there is such group there, but they are absolutely silent and no one knows about them. And the only reason why I say that there is such group is because 40 millions of Ukrainians, and you can find here any idea present. Yeah, this is it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call on myself. First off, yeah, Eugene, we did get a copy of the petition protesting that decision in Parliament to censor any Russian sources of scientific information. I think a number of us have signed it, and we are promoting it because that's a very bad turn.
Thank you.
So the second thing is that there was an article written by Zahar. Yeah, and Denise, forget the other person. I think they're both the social movement.
I guess.
Yeah, and it was about, negotiations in this moment. And the first paragraph talked about how Zelensky had announced that any negotiations with Russia would be public and completely transparent. And I thought that was very unusual, because normally in situations like this or with unions, negotiations are always done behind closed doors where bad deals are made for the people. So if that actually happens, that would be an extraordinary example. And but I thought it was interesting that that was the first time I'd heard that. The last thing is, and we've promoted that article as well because it answers all the questions of the campus about their, terrible position on peace and negotiations. But the third thing is so we are working actively to plan solidarity activities for February 24th. Maybe the war will be over by then. I don't think so, but our whole the center of our perspective is international working class solidarity with not just Ukraine, but we're also, hoping to reach out to the Iranian community, Belarusians, and others to hopefully join in whatever kinds of things we can organize. But I wanted to ask you, from your perspective and the perspective of social movement, we're not in a situation to really raise a lot of money to send funds for medical supplies and things like that. I wish we were. We're not. But what we can do is bring the attention to Ukraine and why it matters to ordinary working class Americans. And I just wanted to find out if you had any comments about what is important to you and to social movement for us to say to people about Ukraine and the future for those solidarity activities in February.
I guess that the main point in general is like give Ukraine more money, give Ukraine more weapon, and so on, because it could sound like a pro government slogans, but it is not, because we like a common Ukrainians struggling without Europeans or Western money and Western weapon. Because if we have enough, I don't know how this calls, air defense weapon, this stuff that shoot on rockets and drones and so on. If we have enough such stuff, we can end blackouts, we can live normally, we can go to work as usual, and so on. Because a lot of people lost their business, small business, I mean, of course, small business, because the big business do not lost anything. A lot of workplaces were lost. People lost their job in general. People do not have money to live, and all of this bad stuff because of not enough weapon to shoot rockets, drones, and so on. And especially a lot of people just died. They can't even go to work now, even with weapon. I mean, even if Europe will give some more weapon, these people will not go to work, go to their families, never again. And this is in general the main point. But I can say that our like a main goal, we understand that Western society tired to hear about Ukraine, because almost a year and all newspapers talking about Ukraine, and a lot of people just tired. And I think that the best thing you could do is try to find another way to make politicians and common Western people to be interested in Ukraine again. Also, I have few comments about your comments about this Russian sources in science. I could say that I'm studying in the most patriotic university in the Ukraine. It calls Kyiv Mohyla Academy, and in this university we do not use, first of all, Russian language at all. We use only Ukrainian and sometimes English. And our professors do not allow it to give us like Russian sources. they can give us only Ukrainian or English sources. But this petition about which I said, signed by the creator of this academy, and it was like a shock for me. I've seen his signation just before our conversation, and I was like shocked, because even he, the biggest patriot in Ukrainian education and Ukrainian society, do not support this law, this new law which prohibit Russian-speaking sources. Yeah, this is it.
Okay, Ted.
Just in regard to your remarks, Cheryl, yesterday, Sergei Lavrov said the Ukrainian new proposal for peace talks is off the table unless they recognize that the 4 areas Russia has annexed are part of Russia. I put a link to a TASS article about this in the chat. So all of the pro-Putin apologists' arguments were just shot out of the water by Lavrov.
Interesting. I didn't see this. Let me check.
If it didn't come through, you know what, John can send it to you via email. Stanley, you raised your hand. I think we should wrap this up. We have a lot of other stuff on our agenda, but yeah, Eugene, thanks.
Just very quickly.
Yeah.
Eugene, you said the petition was signed by, and then I couldn't get what you said. Was it the head of the university, or you're talking about the scientific?
Yeah. He's like a creator of the academy in which I studying, and this academy from the start, it was created like a few years after Ukraine gained independence, and this university.
I just needed that word, creator, and did the law pass, or is it still pending?
Yeah, the law passed. The law is accepted by parliament, approved by parliament, and this is the law now.
Okay,